The problem with AI is that everything is moving. The frontier of what is possible and not possible is moving every week. A little bit less now than 1 year ago, but still moving. The return on experience are still a little bit shallow. You don't have a lot. My advice is this one.
Hey everyone, welcome to another day, another workshop. Today we've got really a special guest, Alexandre Eisenchteter. Alex is a super experienced facilitator with a story that's just too good to be true. He actually started his career working in a post-it factory. Seriously? Can you not dream of a better story for a facilitator? I don't think so. Since then, he's done some amazing things. He started his own facilitation agency, created a digital whiteboard tool way back then in 2008, and was one of the first facilitator to bring AI into his workshops. Hey, I'm not done yet, because he's also founded the AI Thinking Club, a community all about using AI to level up your facilitation. Without further ado, let's welcome Alex.
Hey, Mehdi. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Thanks, Alex, for taking the time.
I listened to my biography from you, and while listening to you, I felt like I was a star, but I'm not. I'm just a facilitator.
That's already good, right?
Yeah.
And next to the bio I made for you, like, if you could do the same but with your own words, what would you say to the audience?
Well, you started with the surprising facts about me, and we could start with that. I indeed started my career as a process engineer at 3M, the 3M company. And you know that 3M company is the company who is inventing the post-it notes. And one of my first job was to do some process improvement projects in the plants that was manufacturing the post-it notes. So one of my job was to spend hours looking at these big lines, producing thousands of post-it notes every hours, and to take notes and to improve the process and to reduce the waste of the paper and stuff like that. So my professional career, at least, I was born to work with post-it notes.
Did you use post-it notes to do this process analysis work?
Yeah, and I had them for free. Can you imagine that? Unlimited supplies of post-it notes. Fun aside, the first ever training that I got while in this company was a training on creative problem solving. And this is where I learned how to do some divergence ideation sessions, brainstorming. So this is the first training I had in my life, past being a student, was a training about using these post-it notes to facilitate some brainstorming sessions. Except that I used the word facilitation and that I had no idea that even existed.
So back then we were not talking about facilitation, but more like the creative problem solving and stuff like that.
Well, it was just that I was trained, okay, as a process engineer, you're going to have a lot of problems to solve. They're going to be complicated to solve. So you will need to gather a bunch of people and do some brainstorming to generate ideas of creative solutions. But it was running sessions, in between quote, not facilitating sessions. I mean, the word facilitation, I've only learned that job when I started to be a professional facilitator a decade later.
Okay, that's interesting. The question I'm wondering is, like, was it the first training for you as a process engineer? Or is it like the first training that 3M is giving to every employees?
So first of all, you need to speak past because that was
Back
24
then.
years. Yeah, 24 years ago. And no, I don't think so. That was part of the training package for process engineers. We were learning a lot about process improvement, how to improve the processes. And part of that was finding creative solutions and doing some brainstorming and stuff like that. And then after being a process engineer, I was at what was called a Six Sigma black belt. I don't know if you know about this methodology. It's a very complex process improvement methodology. absolutely unagile, even if you can inject a little bit of agility in it. But in many of the different phases of a Six Sigma project, you have to diverge. You have to diverge to generate potential causes of problems. You have to diverge to generate potential solutions to that problems. So yeah, something I was using a lot as an engineer when I was at 3M.
I know since we prepared this podcast, you're going to talk a lot about Diverge and Converge, which are steps in the creative process. Maybe can you explain us how it works so that our participant can understand that, so that each time we link to it makes sense?
Yeah, so most people, they know about brainstorming, but brainstorming is just a tool, a technique, but people get it in a wider sense. But basically, what we need to understand is that if we want to work on a topic, one great way to work on any topic is to first generate a lot of alternative items. That's called diverging. So that's the diverging phase. And to alternate this divergent phase with what we called convergence, where you reduce the number of alternatives. And most people think that it only applies to ideas, idea generation. So you generate a lot of ideas and then you select the best potential ideas, but it works at every step of a problem solving process. For example, if you're into the first phases where you analyze the problems, well, you diverge a list of potential problems and then you converge to select the one that are the most important to focus on. It's also the same at the very start of the project. You diverge potential objectives, goals, and stuff like that, and you select the one that you're going to focus on for the remaining of the project. And it's also true at the end of a project. You diverge a list of actions and you converge to select only the one actions that are going to make the difference. So you alternate phases of diverge, converge, diverge, converge, diverge, converge, except that you don't diverge and converge on the same type of stuff: root causes, problems, visions, ideas, solutions, concepts, and actions. That's what is diverge and converge. The key principle is when you diverge, you don't converge at the same time. So these two phases are absolutely separated and you are alternating them. You diverge, you converge, you diverge, you converge. This being said, it's not absolutely true what I just said, because in a really good brainstorming, I'm going to use that word, but now when I use brainstorming, you think of this big divergent phase. When you really want to have a brainstorming that generate creative ideas, you need to chain several divergent steps. And each one of the divergent steps is going to use a different creativity tool so that the participant look at the problem from a different angle and are able to generate a different set of solutions. So you diverge, and the first thing you're going to diverge is a brain dump, the top of the mind ideas. And then you chain it maybe with a simple creativity technique, and they're going to generate another set of 50 ideas. And then you use maybe a more sophisticated creativity technique, and you're going to generate another set of 50 ideas, etc., until you got hundreds of ideas. And some of them will be really creative if you're a good facilitator, if your participants are trained into creativity, and if you use the right techniques.
Okay.
Make sense?
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think we are jumping right into the real stuff. I love this. I have to react. You said then the quality of ideas of people can depend of the quality of the facilitators. Did I got that right in the first
So
advantage?
there are many variables in the quality of the output of the brainstorming, and of course, the facilitator is one of the variable, because one of the example of the role of the facilitator is to make sure that all the ideas are heard and that even the introverts are going to express their ideas. So if, for example, just one example, because there are many hundreds of points of failures. Okay, but one of the point of failure could be that you are using only techniques that are good for extrovert. So, the typical original brainstorming is you brainstorm out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So I say an idea and you're going to say another one and someone else is going to say another one. Well, this is a technique that is great for extrovert people and not so good for introvert because they are not so. So either you facilitate really well so that, hey, you haven't said an idea, it's your turn. And you make sure that the introvert is going to express, or better, use a different technique that is better suited to introverts. So, for example, I never use the out loud brainstorming except when I am with my own team of 3 or 4 people. We know each other
Mm-hmm.
very well, and there is absolutely no risk that someone is not going to speak. But for my client workshops, I never use out loud brainstorming, especially that I have lots of large groups. So imagine that with 500 people. But anyway, even with a small group, I would use silent brainstorming. So the silent brainstorming is a very simple technique. So everybody should be using it. You just
So
ask the
also
question.
called the together alone technique.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you ask them to think about it, to write down the ideas on post-it notes. It's also called the sticky note techniques, I think. Anyway, they write down the ideas on sticky notes and you give them 30 seconds to write down as many ideas as possible. And then you share the ideas on a big wall or whatever. So yeah, silent brainstorming. So this was a very large explanation to answer your question about how can a facilitator have an impact on the quality of a brainstorming. Well, by picking the wrong techniques. It's one of them. Or not explaining the techniques the right way, because creativity techniques can be a little bit weird for participants who are not aware of these techniques or trained to using these techniques. Or, as I said, not facilitating the group and not taking care of the group dynamics. Or also not making the rules respected, such as when you diverge, you don't converge, meaning that you don't criticize the ideas. So if someone starts saying, yeah, we have already done that, and the facilitator says nothing, well, it's the fault of the facilitator, not the fault of the participant, because the participant is not trained,
It's
etc.,
funny. It's
etc.
funny because like this is when you ask, like I'm sure if you ask our participant to close their eyes and to imagine a brainstorm, like they see this like silent room, someone asking the question out loud, and people need to like jump and answer the question like, oh, we should do this, and then there is this pressure. I need to come up with the idea so that I'm not like a stupid guy in front of my colleagues, but then the idea needs to be good, and this is actually the reason why I fell in love with workshop is that experimenting this together alone principle, this silent brainstorming, because then I could really see the impact. Because before, like in this like out loud brainstorming, it was just people trying to show off or battling to present the best ideas, and it was not always linked to the quality of the ideas, but more the quality of the pitch, etc.,
Exactly.
etc.
Yeah. I've been a pro facilitator for 12 years now, and I don't think I have ever used the classical out loud brainstorming once.
Okay,
So,
I have a good question maybe for you. Like, it's a question I get a lot from my found the people I mentor in facilitation is like they have the feeling that when you work in together alone, so in silence, you cannot go deeper in what is in the ID. So they feel like they are missing some of the magic of like talking and describing and exchanging, because then it will create, like someone is gonna react, and maybe we can do this, and on top of that, we could do that.
yeah. So,
Um,
what you are describing is one of the fundamental principle of brainstorming is the springboarding principle. You springboard, you jump on the ideas of others to create new ideas. So indeed, if you only do this silent brainstorming and you say, okay, let's stop it, now we have the ideas, well, you're going to miss a lot, because an idea is going to trigger another idea in another participant's mind. That's called cross-pollination. You say something and it will make me think about something else, so I have another idea which is going to to cross-pollinate to some other participants. So if you only do the silent brainstorming and you stop there, yeah, what you say is true. You're going to miss a lot of ideas. The silent brainstorming for me, I'm going to do that in the 2 first steps of my brainstorming. So the first step is going to be a brain dump. I give them very few seconds just to dump all the ideas they have about the topic. Then I'm going to give more time, and generally I'm going to do that with the silent brainstorming. And then we're going to share the first ideas. And when you share the first ideas, one of my instructions is going to be, if it makes you think of another idea, well, write it down on Post-it notes. Don't interrupt the conversation, but write it down on a Post-it notes. And then I will give even more time to do another round of silent brainstorming. And then I'm going to use other techniques. And 90% of the time, these other techniques, so they could be really sophisticated, but they will all use the silent process so that they're going to be able to think on their own. Or, because I do a lot of large groups, I do a lot of brainstorming in groups of 3, 1 to 3, because 3 is a perfect number. I love to have people work in 3, not alone, not pairs, not 4, but 3. I really like that number. I really like the dynamic, because even an introvert is going to speak in a group of 3, except if you have the boss or somebody really, really strong in the trio. So I could do some out loud brainstorming, but in groups of 3s. And then you're not going to have the problems that you have in out loud brainstorming in group of 10 or 15 people. Okay. And then I'm going to use some techniques that also makes it easier for introvert, because, for example, if you use forced connections, I don't know if you are aware of these techniques. I show an image and I describe the image, and inside the image, there is a connection to your problems. So by the fact of using the image as the intermediate medium between the idea and the participants, it's not really the idea of the participants. So even introverts, they can do that. So again, you have to use the full range of techniques. It's not only about the creativity techniques, it's also about the dynamics, the size of the groups, the time that you give. Is it a part where they think alone, they think in 3, they think in 6, they think with the whole room? How do you manage the cross-pollination? Do you manage the cross-pollination while they are ideating, or is it a separate phase? Well, when I listen to myself, well, maybe it's a job. Lots of variables when you design a
Lucky for
brainstorming.
us, we have a pro in the room to answer all those questions. Before we go back to your story, because we just entered like an interesting chapter, this creativity. One of the exercises you mentioned, or the technique, is that you show a visual, and then it's going to stimulate creativity differently, and they will come up with other ideas. I found that those techniques, listening to music or using a different type of media, is like the cliche of what we expect from this creativity session to be. And then it gives a feeling that it's a childish, we're not working. And sometimes it can like scare some, like, let's say, classical corporate people or senior management. Like, what do you think about this, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, one question, but many angles of solutions and answers to your question. The first thing is that this fear of kind of new age 60s activities is more prominent in France, for example. I know a lot about France. French people really dislike this kind of weird activities much more than in the US, for example. So first of all, I use the same techniques, but I don't present them the same way. I use a more rational explanation when I'm with French people and when I am with engineers, which is one of my favorite population because I like to work on hard technical problems. And also, for example, force connections, if you explain the activity with a scientific, so you need to explain them why it works. okay? And I only use techniques that I am at ease with a scientific explanation behind. I knew the way to say, I'm going to present you something, an image that has nothing to do with the problem, but just by describing the image and the details in the image, it's going to trigger exactly like Newton with the apple. It's going to trigger a chain of thoughts that are going to give you an idea that you wouldn't have before. They understand that, and then they accept the activity,
All
even if
right.
it's a different activity.
So some of the
Uh,
tips is like explaining the why it works when you're giving the instructions, and even going further with like scientific proof, so that you get the buy-in of people without having
Yeah,
to
I don't
challenge any.
spend 15 minutes to explain that, but just giving the example of, yeah, this is serendipity, just like Newton with the apple. They connect to something scientific. And also it depends, again, on the audience that you have in front of you. I work a lot with other engineers. So I would do that. When I have HR people, maybe I'm going to do it differently. So you have to adapt to the audience. That's the first thing. You have to adapt to their cultural environment. US versus France. France is very rational. It's the country of Descartes. So it's very different. Anyway, the other thing is about the boss. One seed of answer is that I never explained the techniques that I'm going to use before the workshop. Okay. Especially if it's weird techniques or icebreakers or whatever activities. I don't explain. I just give a big macro design where I explain what's going to be in the input and what's going to be the output of each one of the step and how much time it's going to take. But I don't explain the techniques in details because I don't want to spend time justifying something that they won't understand because they don't have the
Yeah,
expertise.
exactly. It's your like if they call you, it's because they need you, and you come with your expertise. Like when
Yeah,
client challenged me with like, give me the agenda of the workshop, I was like, even if I give it to you, you're gonna have names of things you don't know. How it's gonna help you?
so
Like,
this is why I give a macro design.
okay,
And but I don't give it by the way I present it. That's different. I explain it. I walk them through. It's a visual macro design. I'm using whiteboard for that. But for example, I do all my macro design in Session Lab with the timing and stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
And I don't give it for approval. Never. Because they don't know what takes 5 minutes and they don't know what takes 25 minutes. I do. Well, I do. Better than them at least, because you never write when it comes to timing, right? Uh, but yeah, if I start to explain what is a force connection, that I'm going to use Dixit cards with this weird childish drawing, they're going to be afraid that it's not going to work. And I know for experience that people love these Dixit cards. So there is a huge disconnect. If I show them to a boss, it's going to think, oh, this is weird. They're going to hate it. And in reality, they love it. So the Dixit cards? That's my favorite.
I think I do. I don't use them, but I think in trainings it's like and they ask you the question like, what did this card rings a bell to you, or pick a card, choose something.
You can use it for whatever you want. You can use it for check-ins. Pick a random card and
Mm-hmm.
explain why this card is you. Or you can use it for, there is a link between there is the solution of our problem in this card. And again, it's going to trigger some creative ideas or creative thoughts. Maybe not ideas, but seeds of ideas that then going to get to a real idea, a real solution to the problem to solve.
Okay. So what I propose, because like you mentioned, like you are like I didn't mention it in the bio, but you are specialized in facilitating like really big workshop. And when I say big workshop, is like hundreds of people. So we will come back to that. But like now, if we go back to your story, so you move from being this process engineer working at 3M, and then to launching your own facilitation agency. Like, how did you make that journey, and why did you do it? Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end at 3M, I was no more an engineer working in plants. I was what's called a new business developer because I always had this entrepreneurial spirit and I wanted to launch new products and stuff like that. I did a master in marketing. So I was doing that and I thought that it would be the dream job for me. And then the product that I had to introduce on the market, I hated them. You get a product from the lab in the US and you have to introduce it to the European market. That
Okay,
was
okay.
my job in a specific transportation division. The first two products that I had to market and introduce to, I was shameful about these products. So it was very difficult for me. So I told myself, okay, I really need to do something else. And at the same time, I was very interested into by the digital world. Was coding on the side. I was very active in an open source community of a content management system that is called Drupal. I had my job at 3M, but I was already organizing international conferences for this open source product. So finally, a company hired me because of that. And I became the operational manager and the R&D manager of a small tech company that was building web apps. So this is where I got into the IT world, web app world. And at some point, we were developing a real-time system. That was 2009. So the web was absolutely not real-time at that time. And we were developing a technology that enabled these real-time interactions that you now have in all the collaboration apps. And we were looking for a way not only to develop the technical side, but also to develop a product on top of that. I was not sure what we could do. It was around collaboration, real-time collaboration. And once I had a conference in the UK, in London, and a very technical conference. You know, in this conference, you always have books, a library where you can buy books. And I came across, so that was 2009, I think, or yeah, something like that. And I came across the Storming book, okay, first edition by Dave Gray. I said, oh, brainstorming. I love brainstorming. So I took the book and I started to read it in the plane. And that's an example of serendipity. So, you know, I was an expert in brainstorming due to my past at 3M. I was developing a real-time technology due to my current time in this web technology. And I stumbled upon this Storming book. And all of that created the connection. Yeah, sure. I need to do a brainstorming application with this real-time technology. So that was the idea of Stormz. And it was also connected to a frustration I had when I was a Six Sigma black belt. I was dealing with very large projects at the end, international projects, and I couldn't do the brainstorming. So remember, 2006, we are speaking 2006. The brainstorming I was doing on the shop floor with my technicians and operators on the lines, I couldn't replicate them with my teams. I had marketing in Germany, the plant in the US, the logistic in France, and we couldn't do these brainstormings because there was no tool, you know, even no web conference. We had only the phone. So we were doing phone conferences and we had to run these brainstorming sessions, think about solutions to problems on the phone. So
Wow.
it was really frustrating. I could do only very simple techniques, not the sophisticated techniques I was using on the shop floor for simpler projects. So that was a seed of frustration that added to the fact the Storming book, the real-time technology, the seed of frustration, all of that collapsed into the idea of creating Stormz. And the first idea of creating Stormz was, I'm going to do the best ever brainstorming tool for remote teams. Okay, that was my idea in 2011.
Wow.
So we created the app. I made a deal with my previous company to use the tech stack, the real-time tech stack, and I created the startup to build Stormz on top of that tech stack, and it was a huge fail. You know why?
Why? Yeah, I have an idea.
2012. every single person I came across, and I told them, hey, I have this great software. Now you can do some sophisticated brainstorming, silent brainstorming, force connections. You can do that online with remote people. And people were telling me, well,
Why?
what's the point? I mean, I can have the people in the room. And by the way, and then I was coming across real facilitators. This is where I learned the word. And these gray-bearded facilitators, like me now,
That
I
you
have a gray
become.
beard. They were telling me, there is no way you can do remote brainstorming. You have to be in the same room with the people to look them in the eyes. Otherwise, it won't work. Remote brainstorming is not only technically impossible, it's not something we want. So there was no market for a remote brainstorming application in the facilitation world at that time. And I was not
But
able to convince
Alex,
people.
what is funny is that, if I remember well, is that the company that we know today, like Miro and Mural, they also started around that time, right?
So Miro was not called Miro. It was called something. Yeah, real-time board, something like that. Mural, we all created. Why? Because it's logical.
The same
The
frustration.
real-time technology was becoming something. So the first thing you think, because I've come across all that thinking, so the first thing you think is, oh, let's build a collaboration app. And there was already WebEx and stuff like that. So you were
You don't
saying,
want
okay,
to
let's
do.
build something else than a video conferencing app. And you were thinking about all the other things. So Stormz is not a whiteboard tool, by the way. You said it was a
Sorry.
whiteboard tool, but it's a different visual paradigm. It's more like a Kanban tool. So not the same kind of board, so that not the same kind of use case. But anyway, we all had the same parallel thinking and came across the same conclusion and created the same kind of tools at the same time. But I think that, so first of all, a real-time board, I think they had some difficulties in their second, third, or fourth years. But then Mural and Miro, they both raised a lot of money. So it enabled them to survive through this tough time. And also, as they are whiteboard tools, they are not exclusively for facilitators. There are also a lot for designers, as you know, Mehdi, by the way. So
Product teams, but you see how they market their features now, like story points estimation and stuff like that.
Agile, yeah. So that was another market that was a little bit more, for example, agile developers were the first to work remotely, and they were more aware of the possibilities, etc., etc. So the whiteboard was more suited for designers. Stormz is not suited for design work. It's more suited for the people who do divergence and convergence and development of ideas and this stuff like that. So I couldn't pivot to this kind of audience.
But you find another use case, right? This is like, okay, I cannot sell this. It's developed. I need to find a solution. What should I do? And
Exactly.
I think a constraint is a great thing for creativity, right?
Yeah. So, well, it's serendipity, but you provoke that serendipity because, so I provoked a lot of encounters. And so one of the encounter was the HR director of the SNCF, the train transportation company in France. And she was telling me, Alex, I really don't need your remote thing. But hey, Alex, in 2 weeks, I have a big event with all my HR managers. And at the agenda, we need to brainstorm how to attract new talents in our company. And wouldn't your software be of some use for this large group brainstorming? And I said, yes, of course. And then I went back to my co-founder. Hey, François, so François, we developed a tool for 5 or 6 people remote. Well, I have a use case for 100% in person. Can we do it? And hopefully
The answer was like, I just need 3 years.
Hopefully François is a great co-founder, and he said, yes, we're going to do something. So we did it, and it worked great. So behind the scene, there was 7. I had to ask some friends and my wife to come in the workshop room. We had to be 7 staff to be able to make it work, because the software was not ready for that, but we put some tapes everywhere so that it works. But finally, the experience was great. So it was our proof of concept. It was a technical proof of concept, a user experience proof of concept, and a selling proof of concept.
And what is also interesting is that you see, like, Alex was not comfortable to sell a product that he didn't believe in when he was at 3M, but like this like totally changed when it was for you because you believed in the product and how it was helping a
Oh
real
yeah,
issue.
yeah. Stormz was and is still my baby, and I'm really proud of the tool that I've bought. I did a lot of mistakes during the 12 years of developing this tool, but especially marketing mistakes. But the tool is great. We'll come back to that. But so the tool worked great in that use case. So large group workshops in person, and still currently in 2024, it's one of the only tool that you can use for in-person workshops. A whiteboard application, for example, is not great because of the big screen that you need to release all the ideas and stuff like that. So Stormz is fully responsive. So everything in the interface, I told you it's not a whiteboard. Everything in the interface works great for in-person setup, but it's not a surprise. It's because since the 4th month of the life of my company, I had to pivot to in-person workshops and large group workshops. The only big difference is when you sell a software for 5 people remote brainstorming, you sell SaaS, software as a service. They use it on their own. But when you sell a software for use with 100, 200, 300 person in the same room, well, it's not just a matter of giving a software and telling them, okay, now you're going to use it and you're going to be able to do some great brainstorming with 300 people. It doesn't work like that. You have to sell the service with it.
Mhm.
So in fact, I created the SaaS company first, but since I pivoted, I had to sell the service around the product. And this is where I started to sell, and I started my own facilitation agency, focused on facilitating large group in-person workshops. So
Okay.
this is where I started the ILO agency.
That's funny because I'm sure most people, when they would hear about this, they would guess like you started your agency doing those big workshop and then you needed a tool to make it work. But no, it was the other way around.
But then it became the other way around. At some point, I had a 10 people team of facilitators. We had to do more than 100K per month in revenue of workshops. So we were doing workshops every week.
Wow.
Sometimes we had several workshops the same day. So I was the main user of Stormz, and most of the features that were created in between 2013 and 2018 were features for us. And this is why Stormz is so good at facilitating large group workshops, because I was in the room, I was seeing the people using it. They were turning, when there was a problem, they was looking at me furiously. So the next day I was coming to the developer and say, hey, we really needed to change that because I don't like when
So it was
participants.
user testing at a big level every time. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's why now people tell me, yeah, I love Stormz because it's very simple to use for participants. It's not that I'm good. It's just because it has been battle tested for 10 years. And I hate when participants are angry at me because of the product. That's only why.
All right.
So that's the story of Stormz. That's the story of ILO. That's why I do so many large groups. And yeah, that's it.
And what you've told me is that at some point you were tired of like running this big facilitation agency because many workshop on a weekly basis, it's quite intense, and also you need to have a sales machine to feed this team. Why did you what happened then, and how did you move on to the Alex we know today, this AI expert in workshops?
So it's a combination of different factors. The first thing is, in fact, I really hated having to bring back more than 100K of workshop revenue every month. That's a lot of stress. Then when you have a team of 10 persons, well, it costs a lot. So you don't make so much money, by the way, because each time you gain a workshop, well, you have to have the people to run it. Then I was spending more time training the other facilitators or managing the facilitators or doing stuff like that. And I have to admit, I'm not the best manager. I like to do things myself. I like to train people, but I like to coach people too. But I like to do things. So spending all my time selling workshops, dealing with the clients, reviewing the design of my facilitators and not doing them, it was a little bit frustrating and very tiring and stressful. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that during all that time, all my focus was on that and less on the product side. So that's why Stormz is less famous than 𝗪𝗶𝗀𝘁 is because of that model. The model where we made so much money doing our own workshops that we didn't have the motivation to market it elsewhere. And also I didn't have the time and attention to market it elsewhere. So there is a huge lack of awareness that was built at that time, especially that at the same time, 𝗪𝗁𝘁 raised a lot of money. So that created that difference of awareness between the two products. And I was a bit frustrated not being able to spend much more time on developing Stormz because I like this product design work. I really like it, but I didn't have the time. And then something else happened. 2020? Rings a bell?
I think so. People needed to work remotely together.
That's COVID. So in 1 month, COVID did what I was unable to do in 8 years. Convince people that, yes, you can do some stuff remotely. And even with the very little awareness that we had on our product, we had 10 times the number of visits on the website. And that was just the trigger I needed to tell myself, okay, now I'm going to refocus on Stormz and transform it into a real SaaS product. It was also a good time for me to reduce the size of the company so that I don't have to sell so many workshops and I could focus on redesigning Stormz. So what we decided, which was a huge decision for me because remember, I have no investors. So everything is financed by either my money or Stormz money, which is the same because I'm the founder. But so I decided to fully redesign the application. Okay, so there was a lot of continuous improvement, but at that time we decided to embark into a full redesign to remove everything that was embarrassing, to build on the good stuff, and to have something that is up to the standard of the market in 2021 or something like that. Instead, that I wanted this to last no more than 1 year, and it lasted 2 years. So it was very long. And we released the new version last year. And I'm really proud of that new version. Really proud. It's exactly what I wanted. We kept everything that made Stormz great, very easy to use for participants, and at the same time, very flexible, so that you can run sophisticated stuff if you want to. So the sophistication is for the facilitator, and the easy to use side is for the participants. We kept that, and we removed a lot of the inefficiencies that we had before, and we removed two things that was blockers for all the facilitators to use it. First one, it was quite ugly. Now it's not. And second, it was very expensive. Again, because it was not my focus. It was very, very expensive. And we just put it at a price that is no more a problem. It's not even a talking point now, the price of Stormz.
And how does it work? Is it like you sell facilitation subscription then to facilitators, or it's not like a company wants to?
I'm basically selling it to solo facilitators like me now. You put your credit card. When you need Stormz because you have a big workshop, you buy a plan that corresponds to the size of your workshops. the month after, you can change plan, get back to the
Okay.
free plan, or so it's really
Okay.
flexible. If you sell a workshop, you buy Stormz. If you don't sell workshops, you get
You
back
don't-
to the free plan. So there is absolutely no
Wow.
risk involved in using Stormz, in paying for Stormz.
Okay.
So
And I
that's how
think,
it works. Yeah.
yeah. A question that I have is like, since you specialize in this huge workshop with so many people, and I can imagine like why software was interesting, like is the number of outputs that is generated. How do you deal with all of that?
So that was one of the pain points. When you have 100 persons and each one of them generates only 3 ideas, you have 300 ideas. Yeah, that's basic maths. The problem is when you have 300 persons from the same company, you usually have a lot of duplicates, right? Especially in the brain dump phase, because they come from the same culture, they talked with each other before. And the first phase, I don't use creativity techniques, so they think the same way and stuff like that. So you end up with 300 ideas, but maybe only 15 of them are unique and interesting. So I developed back in 2014 and 15 and 16, when I was doing a lot of that, I developed a lot of strategies that was really soft strategies. It's not built in the software. It's the way you facilitate the stuff. As I told you, I like people to work in trio because I love the dynamic of a group of 3. So typically what I would do is that they don't think alone, they don't think in 300 person, but they think in group of 3s. And they diverge in their group of 3, but they only put inside Stormz the unique ideas from their brainstorming group of 3s. So you got less ideas. The other thing that I do is that I used a lot of question storming to generate different angles to the main topic. So instead of how might we attract new talents, which is the focus question, you're gonna have how might we change our culture to appeal to young people, or how might we reach more young people. So these are slight different angles to the same problem. And I will divide the room into different parts, and each one of the part of the room is going to brainstorm on one different angle. And that way I make sure that I have less duplicates. So these are 2 examples of the different strategies I was using to force the ideas to be significantly different, even with 300 persons. But then you still have a lot of ideas to deal with. So in standard Stormz, the 2015 Stormz, this is why we developed a lot of clustering features. You can randomize the order of the cards into the main area so that people don't see the same ideas and they're going to move themselves. So you could cluster 300 ideas in 5 minutes like that, make them in group and stuff like that. But then still, it was not a perfect brainstorming. So since 2015, I knew that a kind of algorithm, semantic analysis, or artificial intelligence would have a potential to solve that problem. Okay. So I didn't wait for ChatGPT to come across to think about that. I told you I met some people in 2015 to work on that. But at that time, I made a lot of tests. In 2015, not good enough. 16, not good enough. 17, not good enough. Blah, 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 blah. It was not good enough because, first of all, the clustering was not good enough. So it made maybe 50% of the job. So you still needed to fine tune the last 50%. And the other thing is that it was not suitable for live analysis. I could have used that for the documentation at the end, 2 days later or 3 days later to give a report. But for live analysis, I mean, it was taking 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes to do this 50%. So it was absolutely not usable. So year after year, I was coming across, finding new suppliers, coming back to the old ones, and it was still not working until GPT-2 arrived. So that's 2 years ago or 2.5 years. I
Well,
don't
two
remember
years and a
now.
half, I think. Yeah.
And it was completely different. I immediately saw that, okay, now there is a threshold that has been crossed. Yeah, reached. Now it's feasible. It's not perfect. By the way, it's not perfect now too. You should read my current edition of my newsletter. I explain why AI failed at clustering even in 2024. But now it's good enough that you can use it to help the clustering. And as soon as I saw that, at the same time, that was good. At the same time, we was releasing the new redesigned version of Storm, and I immediately incorporated 7 AI features to the software. And I immediately started to use them in my own workshops. So I probably was one of the first facilitator in the world to be able to use AI for in-person workshops. Because I had the Stormz tool, I implemented the feature in Stormz. I had a little bit of knowledge on how to use that, and I was fearless enough to test it live with my best clients.
And what is this testing showed to you?
I learned immediately one thing: don't use the AI to ideate for the participant. If you do that, they are not going to own the ideas, and it's going to overwhelm them. Because so 2 years ago, when we implemented that feature in Stormz, you press on a button, you get 3 ideas. If you press on a button on all the different clusters that are the different angles of the discussion, you press. 1 minute later, you have 90 ideas. That's absolutely overwhelming.
It was reclustered just afterwards by AI again.
So I was not crazy. I knew beforehand that I shouldn't do that. So I did it a little less, and maybe I generated 10 ideas, but even these 10 ideas were overwhelming. So I learned, for example, that, okay, you generate maybe 3 ideas after they have already generated their own ideas. And then you use them, you tell them, these are AI ideas. By the way, in Stormz, we reflect the principle of self-disclosure. There is always a bot emoji on the ideas generated by the AI. And I explained them before, okay, we're going to use the AI. The AI is going to generate some ideas. We don't care about these ideas. We are going to use them as a springboard. Mehdi, you remember the beginning of our conversation?
Exactly.
Springboarding on ideas. Well, you can springboard on the ideas of other participants, but you can also springboard on the ideas of an AI. If you use it that way, it's going to make you go deeper, find new ideas, and you're going to own them because it's going to be your own ideas. So that's the right way to use AI for ideation. And it's only one of the features. And it's the feature I don't like. One of the feature I prefer is the question storming. Remember the beginning of the conversation?
No.
Question storming. I like to generate different alternative statement of the main focus question. Well, the AI is really good at doing that. And that's the second feature I developed in Storm, so that by one press of a button, I can generate one alternative question. And then I can facilitate the way I want. Either I ask 1/3 of the room to look at that angle, and I generate 3 other angles for the other third of the room, or I generate multiple angles. I randomize the order of these angles, and people just pick the one that they really want to brainstorm. So again, the features in Stormz are just technicalities, technical possibilities. And even with Stormz, you can absolutely use AI the wrong way, the bad way, okay? But if you know what you're doing, and that's important, if you know what's in doing, if you know what's behind, if you respect some fundamental principles, you can absolutely use AI for clustering ideas, for ideation, for development of the ideas, for prototyping ideas, for all the different things that you do in your workshop. You can use AI for your workshop, but you have to do it the right way. And I accumulated a little bit of experience, and I started to speak about that, and I noticed that there was some interest.
No way. You put AI nowadays in any topic, I think it brings a lot of interest.
And as always with Facilitator, a lot of people are really
reluctant.
Reluctant. I'm not sure. Well, it depends, of course, of who, but I'm not sure I'm going to use AI. Maybe at the design phase, but live, really? So this is why I created the AI Thinkers Club.
I see. And there are so many questions I want to ask you also based on all the features you implement in Stormz. But like, imagine like you use AI to brainstorm on questions. Would you still give participant time also to brainstorm questions, or you would just use AI for that step because it's less important, or how do you see this?
So can you guess what's going to be my answer? 2 words. It depends.
Depends. The
So,
answer of a facilitator, right?
yeah, well, it depends on the
Of
context,
the
on the objective, on the number of participants, on the time you have. If you don't have time, you only do it with the AI, and it's less of a problem. Why? Because what's interesting is the AI generated by the participants that are indeed generated by humans. If you can do both, please do both. Another principle, sandwich. So people like my sandwich principle. So everything we have to do with AI, use the sandwich principle. You have the first layer, the first slice of the sandwich is always human input. And the better quality is the human input, the better sandwich it's going to be. Then you add a slice of AI. You let the AI do its job, but you never end the sandwich with just these 2 layers. You always finalize your sandwich for the last layer of human control and refinement. Okay? So
Yeah. You see
it's
what
the same.
Alex has done here is like, if Mehdi needs to understand this, he needs to speak about food. And then he came up with this sandwich. I love the method. Makes sense.
So if you do ideation, first brain dump by the participants, first creativity techniques by the participants, and only when maybe they are stuck, you generate 3 ideas. And you use them as springboard for another layer of human ideas. Okay, that's ideation. Now, clustering. Well, clustering, the first layer is obvious. You cluster the ideas of the participants, first layer. You use AI to cluster. And then the first AI clusterization. So I have we did a webinar about that at the Thinkers Club. My latest newsletter is about that. We don't have the time to go deep, but this is shallow clustering. Clustering by semantic similarities that is done by the AI algorithms is quick but shallow. So you always need to add your own human clusterization on top of that. The AI only helps you to go faster at the interesting part of the clusterization. So again, sandwich. First, human ideas. Second, AI clustering. Third, deep, meaningful human clustering. And I could take anything, any kind of task where you use AI, you're going to have to use the sandwich if you want good quality output.
Another question that I had is like, so you said like a lot of facilitators were, let's say, reluctant or were not sure, and I think I was one of them. Because for me there was 2 problems. One, you mentioned on this idea of ownership, because I think this is one of the magic of workshop, is like pushing people to own their stuff so that they are doing stuff after the workshop, because we know that motivation really drops after the session when they go back to the day to day. And the second one is like being too distracted by the technology. Like the fact that they use the technology, they're going to be more focused on, oh wow, the ID generated, or I need to click there, I need to click on this. And this creates so much and it's a distraction that are not focused on the topic
So
of
that's a good one. Let's take some time to develop this one, being distracted by the technology. So this objection that you have, people had the same about the use of a digital tool for any workshop.
for a workshop in Roma.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And if you were to come in one of my workshops, you're going to see that for a 60-minute time frame, maybe they're going to use the iPad or their mobile phone 6 minutes. But these 6 minutes, or maybe 10, well, you got it. These 6 or 10 minutes are going to make a huge difference. All right? Because they're going to be able to, the digital technology or the AI technology, if we speak about the AI capabilities, are going to enable stuff that are impossible or very hard to do without the technology. So again, it's not a matter of replacing the analog technology with the digital technology or the human thinking with the AI thinking. It's about combining all these modalities together with the right level, with the right recipe. Okay, uh, if you do a cake and you add an ingredient, you don't replace all the ingredients with this one ingredient. You just create a good balance where each ingredient is going to make its part in making a good cake. Well, it's exactly the same when you bring digital tool for in-person workshops and when you bring AI for any kind of workshops. You have to use it at the right level, at the right time, for the right reasons. If you manage that, you're going to go deeper, you're going to go faster, you're going to do things that are absolutely impossible to do it the old way. And just as an aside, the name of my facilitation agency, it's ILO, because I combine high-tech tools and low-tech tools. I never said, it's not the Stormz agency, it's not the AI workshop agency, it's ILO. I combine high-tech tools with low-tech tools. For example, I do a lot of serious games that you are using cards. Okay. And one of the things that we are exploring right now at the AI Thinkers Club, Mike, one of our members, just created a new initiative where we're going to see how we can use custom GPTs, give custom GPTs to our clients. And one of the use cases I have is I created a custom GPT that is a companion to physical serious games with cards and dice and board games and stuff like that. And the custom GPT adds to the experience, enables to ask questions to the participants so that they can go deeper. But again, they don't use the custom GPT in a 60-minute time frame. Maybe they use it 5 or 10 minutes. But these 5 or 10 minutes really add value to the final output. In fact, another way, when I do a demo of Stormz, and it's going to be the same for whatever AI technology you're using or whatever digital technology you're using, I always say, you only do this if it enables you to facilitate a better conversation once the activity is done. Often use this example in Stormz, for example, if you do a multi-criteria evaluation, at the end, it shows a bubble chart. And this bubble chart, I mean, you have precise results, but in fact, it's just a way to facilitate better discussions in the room. So they spend 5 minutes rating, but then you spend 15 minutes discussing about the rating results and saying, why did we miss something? How can we change that? And you have to, but the fact that they have this big graph in front of their eyes, they think differently and better. And they have something in common that they can point with their fingers. Okay, so that's the thing about using technology. For example, I still have Post-it notes. Okay, well, as you can see behind me, I have Post-it notes, but even in my workshops, if you go to my inventory in my house, I have hundreds of Post-it notes because often I have roundtables and I have people do their brain dump. I don't care about the ideas in the brain dump. I don't need to get them to Stormz, okay? Because these are always bad ideas or not good enough. And I ask them to brain dump in a table of 6 people with Post-it notes, maybe to do a little bit of clusterization of these Post-it notes. And then the other round of ideas, maybe I'm going to put them in stars. Why? Because then it's much easier for me to run a convergence session with some voting techniques. If you have 100 people in the room, it's much easier to use a digital tool. Also now, so as I told you, I made a deep dive on clustering. So clustering with AI is so powerful. And even for post-workshop documentation, it's so much better to have the ideas in digital format instead of hundreds of Post-it notes, right?
Definitely.
So you have to find a balanced way to still use the Post-it notes or the cards or whatever physical and analog tool you are using, but in the end, capture the ideas in a digital format so that you can run all the analysis you want and make some deep analysis with AI and stuff like that. So not everything is solved, and I absolutely haven't explored all the ways, but it's also one of the reasons I created the AI Thinkers Club. I mean, at the beginning, I was the only one to organize stuff, to do the webinars, to do the activities, to facilitate the stuff. But now it has changed. In about 6 months, there was a kind of a big change in the way that the members, because they started to be more experienced. They tested some stuff. So now they are taking some initiative. I told you about the initiative by Mike to explore how to use custom GPTs with clients. I have Curtis who's running a prompt sharing workshop. So the dynamic is completely different now because we are starting to explore, to go deeper, to share in between together, to learn from failures, to gather some best practices. And we all see that, again, it's the question of the right amount of AI, the right time, and for the right reason.
A question I wanted to ask is, like you said, because you said you experimented with a lot of things and ideas generated by AI, and you said it was overwhelming. What was overwhelming for participants? Like,
It was overwhelming because at that time, a normal person was not even aware that it was possible. You know?
okay, so right from
I-
the start, you always been transparent. This is generated by AI. By
yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah. I had the intuition that it would be a problem. So when we developed the feature, the first thing I asked the
okay.
developers was to put a little bot emoji in front of everything generated by the AI. The first time I've used it, I still remember it. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe a little less, maybe January 23. I remember some of the people saying, "Yeah, this is scary. The AI is able to do that."
So the discussion is not
Most
even
people
on
now
this.
they have used ChatGPT, but at that time it wasn't the case. So it was a little bit scary.
Mm.
Well, we don't need to think anymore and stuff like that. So that's one of my best practice that I share is that each time I'm going to use the AI to do something a little bit magical, I tell to the audience, okay, so now I'm going to press on that button and we're going to let the AI cluster our 155 ideas. Well, it's an AI, so you never know what we're going to get. We're going to see it's going to to do a good job. Most of the time, it won't do a perfect job, but for us, we're going to have more clarity. We're going to see the duplicates easier. We're going to see
So
the big
managing
themes.
expectations.
And it will be a great start for us to kickstart a discussion about the theme, blah, 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 blah. So I always dumb down the AI. It's not a real person. So
That's really good.
I can tell them the AI is a little dumb. It makes some mistakes, it hallucinates, but still, it would be a great way to kickstart our conversation. So let's do it. I press on the button and then I comment. I made a little bit of show. Okay, it's moving ideas everywhere. Okay, it's creating 1, 2, 3 groups. Okay, sure. Already done. Okay, now let's have a look if he did the job fast. Yes, and then or everybody say, yeah, wow, that was very fast. Okay, now let's see if he did the job the right way. Okay, and then I
Okay.
do it that way. As you say, I manage the expectations. I always tell them that it's going to fail. In fact, it doesn't fail so much, but it never fails at engaging great discussions. Even if it hallucinates a detail, that detail is going to be a great topic of discussion. That's something I did. I remember I did exactly what I described to you. I remember exactly it was 240 people at the beginning of an open space technology session
Okay.
that is very low tech, but for the choice of a topic and a first question, I use AI, and it worked really well.
So Alex, the question I wanted to ask you is, like, when I'm listening to you, when I'm linking the links with what you said, like the best practices when it comes to creativity, the way you use your tool in AI, there is a lot of things to do, right? So first you brain them, then you show them things generated by AI, then other stuff, and then you brainstorm on the question before. It feels like you need a lot of time to do all of these things, and personally, I always challenge to get time for my client to do a workshop. They want to solve this big challenge, but they want to solve it in half a day or a day. How do you do that?
So first of all, that's the story of my facilitation life, okay?
Okay.
This is a typical failure mode for all workshops, is that clients don't give us enough time to do the job the right way, to go in depth. So that's a typical failure mode. And that failure mode is very dangerous. Why? Because if you say yes,
Mm.
you're going to end up with shallow results. You're going to end up disappointing your client. And you're going to end up with article on Medium saying collaborative workshops or brainstorming doesn't work.
Not on Medium anymore. I think on a Substack or something that still exists.
Yeah, well, okay. I'm out of date. But yeah, so you see all the articles that you have. Brainstorming doesn't work. Design thinking doesn't work.
Design thinking is dead. Was a big one.
So whatever. So placeholder methodology doesn't work. Use other methodology instead. Okay. Why? One of the reasons is that people don't understand the methodology and do it in a shallow way. So they are following a recipe without understanding the principle behind the recipe. So that's one of the reasons.
Deep.
And that's true for every single methodology. Brainstorming, design thinking, creative problem solving, Six Sigma, whatever. When it becomes a trend, people make articles with recipes. People try to follow these recipes. They don't understand the principles behind, and they do a shallow application of the methodology, and they get bad results. Okay, that's the first thing. Second thing, timing. We are in a world where we never have enough time, and we have our clients so real world story. Hey, Alex, we have a conference with 300 persons and we want to brainstorm. We have a very complex strategic challenge that we need to work on. So the good news, we have already worked together, Alexandre. So we have already given you 2 hours to do that. All right. That's impossible. That's impossible. If you say yes, you're going to end up with the problems that I've already told you. It's going to be disappointing. So the client will be disappointed. The results will never be communicated post-workshops. The result will not be implemented post-workshops. The participants are going to remember that they spent 2 hours doing something that was not implemented after. So they're going to remember that workshop. Another post-it activity. They want to amuse us with another post-it activity. So this is what's going to happen. So we don't have a choice, because if we continue saying yes, we will have the 5,000 or 10,000 euros, but we won't have the next 5,000 or 10,000 euros. So there is no shortcut to spending time discussing on a topic. There is no shortcut for deep facilitated discussions on a topic. So if it's a brainstorming or if it's something else, there is no shortcut to making participants discuss so that they can realize stuff. So once you have said that, what are the strategies? So the first strategy is pruning the agenda of the goals of your client. So I've already shared with on LinkedIn and with the IAF my own scoping meeting framework, where I ask, what are all your objectives? And then I challenge them and I make them pick only one. Then if this objective is not feasible in the time frame, I always say it. First meeting, I say it. So I've already, at that time, I've already won the project. Most of the time it's because I have loyal clients, so I don't go through a RFP or whatever. So we do the first meeting. I know that I'm going to do it, so it's a little bit easier for me. But I always say, this is not possible. Or I don't say it that way. I say, this is what you're going to end up with. if we have 2 hours, you're going to end up with seeds of ideas. Okay? Which means that you have to do this and this and that, and you have to do maybe another meeting with a smaller group of participants to handle these seeds of ideas. So I explain all the work that will need to happen after the 2 hours in large groups. So usually I always say the same thing. So you will need to find 5 or 7 highly motivated people that are in the room today, and they're going to end up with these 300 seeds of ideas, and they're going to have to do this and that. If you want, I can help you and facilitate that group. It's going to be 5K more. That's called upselling, right? So yeah, you can, by the way, you can end up selling more workshops if you convince them about that. So if you have the right arguments. So you prune the objectives. Then you start to ask them, you've given me 2 hours. Maybe you can give me the full morning, right? So you can also try to do that. And then you have to separate the work in between work that is done during the meeting and some post-workshop work with a small group of participants. Or the same, because I'm speaking in my context, which is always a large group. But if you have 15 people and I can only be there for 2 hours, well, you ask for another 2 hours and you give them a choice. So they're going to end up with 300 seed of ideas. Either they handle it by themselves, or I can facilitate another meeting where we're going to do the convergence. Okay. So I don't try to stuff divergence and convergence and development of the ideas in the same meeting if I don't have the time. What I explain is, okay, we can do only the divergence, and you will need 2 other meetings for the convergence and the development of the concepts. All right. Either you do it, you're confident enough that you can do it on your own in a smaller group, or I can help you with, and you upsell to 2 other workshops, and you pass for a pro.
Wow.
So that's a way to go from something that is bad, not having enough time and giving disappointing results, to something where you send more workshop and you pass for a pro.
I think that's great. Alex, you said a lot of great things in the life, of course, in the entire interview, but in the last 5 minutes, because I do believe that one of the reasons why workshops fail is like really managing customer expectations, and you manage that in the first call you have, and this is why maybe your canvas can help. So I will put it in the show notes, so making sure that you scope it well. And this is where exactly when it comes to managing expectations, you want to do it right away. This is not possible. This is what you would get. I think for the upscaling part, this is, of course, this is a great sales tactic, but most of the time, people don't really know what is a workshop, or they've never experienced a real workshop, like when really things happen. In your case, they know you. So it's like, okay.
Yeah, but you don't need to sell it right now.
You can sell it after.
You need to plant a seed. You plant a seed. And when you do the macro design, you show the next step. So one of the things I do always in a scope meeting, even when I have enough time, is to macro design what's going to happen next. Okay. I tell them, okay, now you're going to need to have a leader to follow all the initiatives that we have scoped during the workshop, the one-day workshop, and he's going to be able to do that. And I meet with that person before. So I prepare the post-workshop activities so that even if I'm not there, most of the time I don't want to be there because this is not the kind of thing I do. Post-workshop follow-up. I don't do that, but I make sure that they have their return on the investment they made during the workshop by setting up the governance and giving the initial energy for that governance. So you always explain what's going to happen next. And if you see an opportunity, you tell them, and we'll see that later, but I could accompany you for this meeting here and this meeting here, blah, blah, blah. And then you focus on your workshop. You say, okay, we're going to do only the divergence. We're going to do it very well. And you're going to have some very creative ideas. And we're going to have a pre-selection of maybe 30 ideas. And then in the next meeting, you will have to shortlist them and develop them. Now you have the time to do your job perfectly. And the client is going to tell you at the end of the workshop, or even sometimes at the middle of the workshop, they'll tell you, wow, it's awesome, Alex. I really like the way you diverge in several steps and this force connection activity. It was really good, really good. And you tell them, well,
Can do
if you
that.
want, we will talk about that. But if we want, we can. We will be able to do the next step together.
Okay. But what I love in what you said is like you're showing them all the work, the big work that they will need to do after that, which can like scare them. Like, oh fuck, I need someone to help me also, like making sure that we do those tips well. And then it makes it easier for them to call you again for another session
Yeah,
because
it
they're
doesn't
scared.
always work. Sometimes we
Yeah.
have people to be able to do that, but I prefer to scare them at the first meeting than scare them at the end of the workshop when they see, well, but all of that is raw material. Oh my God, I will have to,
Mm.
who's going to do that? And then sometimes they even think, Alex, you're going to document all of that and finalize all the ideas and no. You don't want to have this conversation, right?
Especially for like 200 people workshop. No, but I think this is great
Even with
because
AI.
you said it like so many times. You don't want people to say, "Oh, it was a great workshop, but nothing happened afterwards," which is something you always hear, like when you're like preparing to sell another workshop.
Another post-it session.
Those sessions are great, but we never do anything. So by being smart enough, by taking the time to make sure that they have a good governance, you increase their chance of success, and in the same way your own chances of success.
Yeah. So I call that the Soufflé effect. You know Soufflé?
You have
When
a
it
name
comes
for
out of the
everything.
oven, it's magnifique. And then 10 minutes later,
Yeah. Nice.
because
Nice.
everybody's always enthusiastic at the end of the workshop. Wow, it was great dynamic. Oh, I love this icebreaker, blah, 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 blah. And then 1 week later, but what did we do?
I love the way you speak about your own work. It's crazy. All right. So Alex, I just wanted to startly wrapping up this episode with a couple, like one big question, because you told me something that like is still in my mind and I need to address it with you. You told me like dot voting is shit. And I didn't take it personally because actually I do dot voting in my workshop, but I know it's like a practice that is very commonly done in the field. So why is that? Tell us.
Okay, so no, dot voting is not shit. And by the way, I never speak like that.
Then sorry, my translation from French to English
No.
went wrong.
Dot voting is shit in the same way that brainstorming is shit. Okay, it's when people think that the only way to do convergence is with dot voting that it is shit.
Okay.
This is shitty thinking because there are multiple ways to converge, and again, 2 words, it depends. Sometimes dot voting can be the right technique, but it shouldn't be automatic. And what I see with young facilitators, especially using Miro, is let's do dot voting. Yeah, well, think about it. Is it really the right technique? Maybe you want to do $100. Maybe you want a budget of points. Maybe you want to do a multiple criteria analysis. Maybe you want to do a like first and then the dot voting. So yeah, you need to design your converging session the same way you design your diverging phase. Second, still there are some inherent problems with dot votings, and you need to address them. The first one, especially if you're using a simple whiteboard tool, the problem with dots is that dots attract dots. All right?
The bias of
Yeah. If you start to see a dot on a post-it, your gaze is going to be attracted by that post-it notes, and there are more chances, there are studies that say that, more chances that this idea will be voted. So there are some practice to avoid that. If you're using physical dots, you need to ask people to think about where they're going to put the dots before putting the dots. And then they put the dots. It's just a matter of implementing what they have already decided. So there is a little bit less of a bias. Still, some people can change their mind because, oh, the boss voted on this one. Well, then you have some other biases, and then you can use digital tools that deal with that. For example, I think in Miro now there is these voting widgets that are anonymous. You put your dots, but in an anonymous ways. It shows only when the voting is
The
done.
voting session is done. Yeah. It's been a while, actually.
Stormz, it exists since 2012. Sorry, guys, but the voting is anonymous, and you have different types of votings, dynamics, depending on the context. In Stormz also, the ideas are randomized in their physical placement. So the idea on the top left is not the same for everybody. And it's important because in our culture, we always start reading on the top left, meaning that the idea on the bottom right will be seen by no one. So it has already no chance. If you randomize the order of the ideas, you don't have this problem anymore. This is something that is very easy to do with the good software and very difficult to achieve with a physical post-it notes. So the way I do it with physical post-it notes, just to show you that I have always solutions, even with physical post-it notes, is that you put the ideas on different walls, and at least you ask some people to start with wall 1, some other people to start with wall 2, some other people to start with wall 3, and on each one of the wall, you ask some people to start on the left side and some other people to start on the right side.
But it makes it tricky also to vote then.
Okay, so because not only dot voting, so dot voting is with a budget of dots, so maybe you have 10 dots, but when I have a lot of ideas, I don't like to do dot voting again. Why?
No.
Because if you have 300 ideas, it's very difficult to read all the ideas and to know the one you're going to put the 10 dots. So what I do is a first step where I give them unlimited number of dots.
The heat map.
And
like
each time they like an idea, they put a dot. If they super like an idea, they put a blue dot or 2 dots, whatever. And that's the first stage. And then you keep only the one with the dots. And then you can do dot votings with 10 dots if you want, or another technique.
Very interesting, Alex. And I think this is like you mentioned in your tool that you can choose criteria, selection criteria, and then you will have a matrix. And you know, when you use those things, you always it's always funny to see like the sticky note with the most votes. Like if you use the impact effort matrix, then you see that this idea is actually like very bad when you do like another type of convergency. So it shows the limit of the method, of course.
So this is why I chain them. So usually when I have a lot of ideas, which means that you had a healthy divergent part, so you should have hundreds of ideas. You have a first one to select the top 30, 50. You have something similar to a dot voting with a budget of points that enables you to select the top 10, 15 or top 5. And on this top 5, you can then have them develop the ideas, because again, we have only seeds of ideas on post-it notes. That's not good enough. You should never stay at the seed of an idea. You should develop them. So there are multiple frameworks to develop ideas. We didn't talk about that. That's another one of the things that is important to me. You develop the 5 ideas, and then you do a multiple criteria evaluation to evaluate the strength of the idea. You can even do a multiple criteria evaluation before developing the ideas to detect the weaknesses. Then you develop them to make them stronger, and you do another multiple criteria evaluation with the same criteria, and that's the strength of your developed concept. And then you can decide go, no go, improve, whatever you want, action plan for each one of the 5 concepts. So you went from 300 ideas, maybe 30, 40, 50, then a short list of 5, and then out of the 5, you have 3 goes and 2 1 maybe and 1 no go.
Cool. Love that. You mentioned like out of curiosity, you said like it's a healthy divergent phase. What is the good ratio of like someone producing ideas for a question? I know it will depend, but like since you mentioned healthy, but with the number 300 as a group,
whatever the size of the group, having more than 100 unique ideas is a minimum. I mean, do the test of the document clipper. With you can brainstorm
Yeah.
tens of ways of using this clipper. So you should be able to, for whatever problem you are trying to solve, if it is well scoped, not too wide, not too narrow, you should be able to find more than 100 unique ideas easy.
Okay. Easy. All right.
Well, easy, yeah. Well, if not, they don't need a facilitator. If
Martha.
it's to find 5 unique ideas, they don't need a facilitator, a creativity facilitator. And again, we are speaking about creative problem solving. Not all problems need creativity, right? That's only one part of the type of workshops that we do. Sometimes we don't need creative solutions. We just need consensus on what the problem is and decide on something to be done about that problem. You don't need to generate 100 ideas in that case.
All right, Alex. Since you are leading this AI thinking club and you've been quietly invested in the topic for the last 3 years, what would be the advices that you would give to a facilitator that never used AI? How should he start?
The problem with AI is that everything is moving. Okay, so the frontier of what is possible and not possible is moving every week. A little bit less now than 1 year ago, but still moving. And the return on experience are still a little bit shallow. You don't have a lot. By the way, that's why I started the AI Tinkerers Club, so that we can explore ways. So my advice is this one. You map the activities that you do the most. You design your workshop, you facilitate your workshop, you wrap up, you document. Maybe you can go a little bit more in detail than that. And you list the different activities that you do the most. Then it's going to give you ideas of use case for using AI. Maybe I can use AI to ideate or to do a question storming and stuff like that. You pick one use case and you do a POC. You use ChatGPT, you use Miro AI, you use Stormz AI, whatever the tool that is needed to try to implement it. And you try it either on an output from an old workshops or with loyal clients or with colleagues from the community. And you improve it. And when it's done, well, you have one use case where you can use AI. And you start again with another use case. One of the things that I'm going to be doing very soon is a mini course. It's going to be free, 5 days to start using AI for workshops. That's going to help people to do that. But until that, my advice is pick one area and try to implement it. If you're artists, do it on your own. But if you are not, this is typically the case why I created the AI Thinkers Club. So I don't want to oversell it, but that's why I created it, so that we have all the people who are interested in implementing AI in their workshops can discuss and share. And we have all levels, from beginners to people like me who have used it extensively. But if you want to do it on your own, one use case at a time, and don't stop the first time it fails. And also do a micro use case. Oh yes, this one. People always come to me. Oh, I've tried to use AI to design my workshop. It did not work. So the design my workshop is a macro activity. Within designing your workshop, you have hundreds of micro activities, such as, for example, fine-tune the instructions for this activity. AI is really good at challenging you at the clarity of your own instructions. So when I have an instruction, I know that it's a little bit tricky to explain, and I don't have a lot of time to explain. I submit it to the AI, and it's going to roast the clarity of my question.
Nice.
So that's one micro use case. It's very easy to develop the prompt because it's micro. It's going to give results, and it's going to be the first thing that you're going to get value from an AI. And you build on that. You had another micro use case, a second micro use case, a third micro use case. We are building a library of micro use case for workshoppers, people who do workshops. And the idea for me is we're starting to have a lot of micro use cases. I want to open it to everyone. Right now, it's between the closed door of the AI Thinkers Club, but that's something I want to give back to the community. So this list of micro use case, but I have so many things to do. It's not done yet. It's on my bucket
There
list.
is a huge to-do list.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the opposite, if there is like one trap to avoid, what would be this trap?
So not doing the sandwich. So always start with human and as good quality as possible. Then let's do the AI do its job, and then always refine and control. Typically, what people don't do is the first step where you need to give your own input. So, for example, I never use the AI to tell me which kind of methodology I should use to design my workshop. I will feed it with my ideas of methodology. I will feed it with a step-by-step instruction of what should it do. And then I'm going to get some interesting output from the AI, such as the pros and cons of the methodology, or maybe the instructions or stuff like that. But the first layer of the sandwich is very important. You give as much thing as possible. And this is where you add your own stuff. With the same prompt, the output is going to be different because I'm going to feed it with my own creative ideas, my own unique perspective on how to do the job. So that when I'm going to feed it to the same prompt, I'm going to get different results than you maybe going to have, because you're going to feed it with your own perspective, your own way of working, your own ideas, and you're going to get different results. If you just put one line of do the design for a reverse brainstorming session, you're going to, both me and you, we're going to get the same results, and it's going to be disappointing.
Oh, I love that. What would be the top 3 resources you would give to those people just starting with AI, except then joining the AI
No,
Tinker Club, which
so
obviously is obvious.
Yeah, but it's paying, so I don't want again to oversell that. This is why I've just relaunched my newsletter. So my newsletter is a free newsletter. It's called AI for Workshop Now. So everything is in the title. It's for people who do workshops and want to use AI now, today. And it's one edition every 10 days. The last one was yesterday about clustering. The next one is about Notebook-LM, which is a great new tool from Google. I'm going to explain why it's great for us facilitators. And the one after is on ideation. So it's a deep dive on one topic. I spend hours on each one of the newsletter. It's not a list of links. I really spend hours making a kind of everything you should know about the topic, clustering and AI, ideation and AI, and stuff like that. It's a 5-minute or 10-minute read. And yeah, I think it's a great way to start. It's a great resource. And again, when you ask me this question, I really need to do the 5 days to start with workshopping with AI.
You also have a book club in the community, right? What is the top book you would advise people to read?
I would like this one. So we have a book club that is led by Yves, one of our members. And right now we are reading as a group Co-Intelligence by En-Naizi. And what I really like is the word, the title says it all, co-intelligence. So how you collaborate with an AI, which is not the same as how AI can do the job in your place. And this is exactly what I said, what I told you. I don't say I use AI to ideate in place of the participants. No, I use AI to ask questions to participants. I don't use AI to cluster in place of the participants. No, I just use it as a starting point for people to cluster themselves deeper, faster, etc., etc. So great book, great concepts. I was inspired a lot by some of the things that En-Naizi said in the last 24 months. So yeah, I really advise people to read this book.
That's awesome. Alex, one last word on AI and workshop that comes to mind. It can be a statement, a belief you have, whatever.
So I think that AI is going to stay, and I don't believe in AGI, general intelligence, the fact that I think that we are already seeing a kind of plateau, but it's still evolving and progressing, but we are already seeing a kind of plateau.
Plateau in what? In the capabilities of the AI, or?
Yeah, it's not exponential anymore.
Ah, okay.
I want to put it at the right level. It's just another tool in your toolbox, facilitation toolbox. And I want to say it's going to be the extraordinary game changer tool. It's going to change everything in your life as a facilitator. But I don't want to say the reverse too. It's already a great tool to add to your facilitation toolbox, such as a facilitation tool, such as a card deck, such as all the other tools and techniques that we have already. And if by principle you say no to using AI in your workshops, where you're cutting yourself out a lot of possibilities in every stage of what you're doing as a facilitator, because it's a very versatile tool. You can use it to sell your workshop, you can use it to design your workshop, you can use it to facilitate your workshop, you can use it to wrap up your workshops. So if you say no by principle without looking, without testing, without thinking deeply of the right way to use it, if you stop yourself because you see the bad way, well, you're missing a big opportunity.
Wow. I think everyone is going to have FOMO after this episode for not integrating workshop in our toolbox.
I didn't. I'm going to correct that, because I just said I want to put it at the right place, which is just another tool.
Yeah.
Not the biggest game changer. Is not going to replace you yet. You can still do facilitation without AI. We've been doing that for 50 years, hundreds, thousands of years, but still you're going to be missing a lot. So just come and talk to me, and try and iterate and explore and be curious about it and open. And that's all that I ask. If you don't want to use it after that, no problem.
Thank you very much, Alex. So, of course, we'll put every information in the show notes, so you'll have access to. You will have the link to the community of Alex, the link for the newsletter, and other great resources he shared in today's episode. Alex, it was a pleasure having you. Honestly, I think we could have made a day of a recording, but we're gonna stop here, and who knows, maybe another one will be asked by the community.
We'll have to see first if people are indeed interested in what I was saying today. But I wanted to thank you for the invitation. Very nice of you, Mehdi. And if I can help in any way, I'm here.
Thank you, Alex. My pleasure. It was really great having you. Guys, I hope you will enjoy the episode as much as I did. We see us very soon, and have a nice day or a great evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.